the webinar today. And then Mary Ellen is going to take over about halfway through with some of the data for our presentation. Today in this webinar, we're going to talk a little bit about an overview of the study, a description of who our respondents are, so you have a good sense of what we're talking about in terms of who was responding to our survey. We're going to share some selected results from the study. You can absolutely download the full report to see all the results if you're interested, and a link to that ID study report is in the chat box if you want to take a look at it. We're going to share some takeaways from the study and also have some time at the end for Q&A. So please do feel free to ask any questions that you have. We have numbered the slides if you want to refer to a specific slide in your question. All right, so an overview of this study. We have found that while the literature on instructional designers and their roles in higher education is certainly growing, there hasn't been a lot of attention specifically to their roles in research on teaching and learning. And that was something that we were kind of interested in, because as we were going around to different conferences and talking with instructional designers and presenting on research design and methodology, we had a lot of instructional designers asking really good, thoughtful questions, but also kind of letting us know that they did not necessarily feel prepared to collaborate on these research projects. They felt like they didn't have the research design and methodology skills that they would need to be really successful. We also heard from some people that they just weren't really viewed as researchers at their institution. And so we wanted to really dig into that. And we decided to engage in a national study to explore specifically the research engagement and training of instructional designers who are currently working in institutions of higher education. And we were hoping to target instructional designers with a range of experience levels and also training backgrounds from campuses all over the United States. So we had 4 areas that we were asking research questions in. The first is we really wanted to know about the formal education and training of instructional designers. What were the disciplines that they were coming out of? What kinds of courses were they taking in research design and methodology from their undergraduate experiences and beyond? We also were interested in learning more about the research methods and design training needs of instructional designers. What were the things they were hoping to learn more about or that they felt would really be useful in their positions? We wanted to learn more about the purpose of training for instructional designers. So how are they actively engaging in research on teaching and learning in their current positions? And also we were curious about the current research by instructional designers. What are the things that they're working on right now in terms of research on teaching and learning? So we started recruiting for this for about a month, starting in late March of 2017, and we had an online survey with 60 questions. And the responses we're going to be talking about today are drawn from a little over 311 respondents who gave us kind of complete data in that survey. And we also had several recruitment partners, including UPCEA, that helped us with getting the word out about this particular study. And I'll share a little bit at the very end of the presentation about some of the other webinars we're running as well, kind of taking apart different pieces of this report through our partners. So to give you a little bit of a sense of who responded to our survey instrument, almost 80% of our respondents identified their race or ethnicity as white, and almost 70% identified their gender as female. Almost 64% reported having a master's degree as their highest degree. And then a little over 60% work at a university granting PhD or professional level degrees. We found that a little under half of our respondents have experience working at a single higher education institution as an instructional designer. But you'll see in a little bit, many of them also worked in other fields. Our respondents came primarily from public institutions, with a little bit over 60% working at a public institution. We had a little over 30% who worked at private institutions, and then also some of our respondents worked at for-profits, so that makes up that remainder. And as we pointed out before, we had a little over 60% who worked at a university that was PhD granting or professional degree granting. But on this slide, you can see kind of the breakdown of the different kinds of respondents we had. So we had a little bit from all over, but the highest number was definitely that PhD professional degree granting, followed by universities that granted bachelor's and master's degrees. About a fifth of our respondents came from those universities. And then smaller numbers of our respondents came from community or two-year colleges, universities that granted bachelor's but not graduate degrees, and technical, trade, vocational, and professional schools. In terms of their years of work experience in instructional design, about 1/3 of our respondents had worked as instructional designers in higher education for less than 5 years. So this doesn't necessarily reflect their overall years of experience as instructional designers, but just how much they had worked within higher education. As you can see from this slide, though, we have quite a spread of the range of people and how many years they had worked in instructional design. And you can see that a little more than 1/5 of our respondents have 13 or more years working in instructional design in higher education. So quite a bit of experience within this group. We also asked about years of experience working as an instructional designer in any industry. And what you'll see here is we have, quite a spread, but again, we have many people in the group who have more than 15 years, almost 1/3 of our respondents working in any industry outside of higher education. Now, this was from a smaller group of people who had experience outside of higher ed. So you'll see the N here is a little bit smaller. We also wanted to know the highest level of degree attainment from our respondents. And we mentioned on an earlier slide that master's degree was kind of the largest number, but we also had over 1/4 of respondents who had a doctorate or a JD or another form of professional degree. So you'll see here that we have smaller numbers of folks who have only a bachelor's degree or some graduate coursework. The majority of our respondents definitely had kind of significant training going beyond the undergraduate level. We were interested in the disciplinary background of our respondents as well, and almost 66% have at least one degree in instructional design or related fields, so about 2/3 of our respondents. And then in terms of their bachelor's degrees, there was almost an even split between arts and humanities degrees and social and behavioral sciences, as being kind of the two largest areas where they're drawing their degrees from in terms of discipline. For disciplinary background of the more advanced degrees, we found that over 60% of our respondents had master's degrees in education. And for the doctoral degrees, that went even higher. Almost 3/4 of the respondents with doctoral degrees had them in education. So that was also pretty interesting. So overall, of the 311 respondents in the survey, they were combined to have earned a total of 767 degrees all told. So a pretty educated group overall. So one of the questions we asked was about how many undergraduate level courses these respondents had taken in research design or in research methodology. And we found that more than half did not take any of these courses at the undergraduate level. Approximately 5% were not sure. And then you'll see here that about 1/3 of the respondents had taken maybe 1 to 2 courses, and then slightly more courses were taken by a pretty small fraction of the overall respondents from this group. So pretty uncommon for our respondents to have research design and methodology courses at the undergraduate level. We also wanted to know about their current engagement in research, and we found that almost 50% of our respondents are currently engaging in some form of research. And based on that research, we were interested in kind of the top methods and designs that were being used by our respondents. And we found that qualitative methods more generally and survey research were the 2 top methods currently being used, followed by quantitative at over 50%, interviews, and mixed methods. So these were the top 5 research methods and designs that were being used by our respondents on research on teaching and learning. Also note here the N is a little bit smaller because these are just that proportion of people who are currently engaging in research. We were very curious about whether or not research was considered to be an official job responsibility for our respondents. And we wanted to know if their job description included conducting research on teaching and learning, and also if that was something they were kind of officially evaluated on as an instructional designer. And you can see from this slide that we had about 1/4 who said that their job description included conducting research on teaching and learning. And then we also had a little over 1/5 say that they were being evaluated on this as part of their work as an instructional designer. We also learned from our survey that over 40% of instructional designers are expected to collaborate as a team member on research on teaching and learning. and that over a fifth are expected to independent research on teaching and learning. So these are kind of interesting numbers. If we go back to the previous slide, that we have over 40% expected to collaborate, but only a quarter say that their job description includes conducting research on teaching and learning. So there's a little bit of a disparity there between what the expectation is that you're going to do and what you're actually being kind of officially evaluated on. I'm going to pass this over to Mary Ellen, who's going to give a little bit more information about some of our findings.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Everybody hearing? Good. So I'm going to talk a little bit about now the importance of and the motivation for instructional designers' research skills. So first of all, we're going to look at this rather large table. And this table answers our question of why instructional designers think they should further develop their research skills. We asked them this question, and we gave them this list of reasons. And if you just take a glance at this table, you can see we have a lot of folks who are saying, yes, these are all reasons that they should further develop their research skills. And if you look at the top five, they're at the top part of this table. So the top five reasons were opportunities for individual professional development at over 88%. Many also agreed that understanding student needs was important, and developing their research skills to that end was important. Understanding instructor and faculty needs, as you would say, that was important to instructional designers at 86%. And then opportunities for faculty collaboration was also very high at over 85%. And then as you can read down through the rest of them, to further the discipline was also important, why they should develop their skills. Opportunities for career or job enhancement was also important. Opportunities for collaboration with other instructional designers, publications, grant funding, and to demonstrate their value were all in the range in which the majority of individuals said yes, these were reasons why they should develop their research skills. And then we have this small group at the bottom that gave other reasons, and they specified things like personal fulfillment, providing evidence of the efficacy of their work, and increased credibility. And that credibility idea comes out in a later question that I'll talk about in a moment. So as we see from this, there was high agreement here and why they should be developing these research skills. So we also asked the instructional designers the degree to which knowledge in research design and methods enhances their work as an instructional designer. And here you see the kind of increasing circles here, and the emphasis here is when you look at the rating scale and you add together the rating scale of quite a bit and a great deal, we see that about 2/3 or a little over 2/3 of the instructional designers said yes, that really having this knowledge in research design and methods enhances the work that they do as instructional designers. And so it's a very strong kind of agreement, with almost 94% saying that it's enhancing their work at least somewhat. So pretty resounding results there. So respondents were also asked how they thought that knowledge of research methods and design enhanced their work as an instructional designer, and they gave us a lot of really rich qualitative responses. And so two of the major categories that came out of these qualitative responses are ones I'm going to show you now, and then I'm going to go through some of the other categories of their responses. So the first kind of dominant category that we found, the largest group of respondents, about 35%, indicated that knowledge of research methods enhanced the work of instructional designers by providing them the background and skills to understand the research evidence and then apply it to their course design. They indicated that having these research skills allowed instructional designers to do their own research, and then the results would inform their course design. So this is the category of evidence-based design, as how this really impacts them and enhances their work. And so on the screen here you see two examples of some statements that the instructional designers gave us in the survey. So the first one, being able to incorporate results of well-designed research into course design yields improved courses. And then the second one, it helps instructional designers to collect and analyze data about the courses they design and revise with greater trustworthiness and validity. We thought those two comments really kind of exemplified what this category of responses that was pretty dominant really looked like on evidence-based design. The second category, or the second largest group of respondents, and this was at about 25% of them talked about this, indicated that knowledge of research methods enhance the work of instructional designers by supporting or improving the credibility and legitimacy of their roles as instructional designers. So this is the category we're calling credibility/legitimacy. And we have two example quotes, respondents. So one says, faculty respect instructional designers with this knowledge and therefore utilize them more and engage with them in more challenging projects. And then the other example quote here is, it gives innovative insight on the work instructional designers do and makes instructional design credible to faculty members. And those two really kind of captured similar sentiments that we read in some of these responses from about 25% of the sample. So those were the two, categories that were really very prominent in the responses to this question, but there were also additional categories. And so we don't have quotes for each of these, but this will just give you a sense of the other categories that people talked about in response to this item. So additional categories included that it helps with evaluation and assessment of interventions, that this knowledge of research methods helps in that area. Another one was allows for data-driven decision-making. Again, taking that research knowledge and applying that to making decisions based in data in the work that they do day to day. Another category that was talked about was makes instructional designers better consumers of research. So because they had that research background and research skills, they were able to read and understand research better. And then we had 4 more additional categories that came out in the responses to this question. The fourth one was provides a better understanding of the faculty role. So instructional designers said that having a better sense of research helped in understanding what faculty research was about. And the fifth one was provide skills to share out research more effectively. So again, these research methods, background and skills allowed them to be more effective in disseminating their own research. And then the sixth one produces better learning experiences for students, right? We have to remember that that's the ultimate outcome in this case. And then the seventh one is their knowledge enhanced their feelings about advancing the field. So these were all kind of summarizations of the comments that we received to this really rich qualitative question. So we also asked the instructional designers about their level of interest in engaging in research design tasks. And so this table here shows their relative interest in these tasks that we gave them over here on the left. So the majority of the respondents, if you just take a glance at this table, they rated all of these research tasks as having moderate or high interest. So you see a lot of kind of higher on the right sides of this table. So for example, if you look at collaborating on research, over 75% in this case said they had moderate or high interest in doing that collaboration. And that is corroborated by other items that we also found in our surveys, that they were really interested in that collaboration. Also another one, almost 70% at the bottom, said they had moderate to high interest in disseminating results. And then reading and summarizing the literature was right behind it at about 69%. But if you look at that far right column, again, the majority were saying moderate to high interest in doing these activities, and they're interested in engaging in these kinds of research design tasks. So that gives us a sense of what we learned about their motivation and the importance of why they want to kind of develop and engage in these research design activities. What I'm going to talk about next are some of the conclusions that we have from the entire study. We have several takeaways, and these takeaways are going to give us several opportunities for our instructional designers and the supervisors of instructional designers and campus leaders who want to leverage the expertise and the skills of the instructional designers at their own institutions. So I'm going to go through these 5 takeaways and just give you a little taste. We didn't cover all the results that led to these takeaways, but I'll give you a little bit of background on each one. So our first takeaway from the study was that many instructional designers want to collaborate on teaching and learning research with faculty and their peers, as we've already mentioned. 3/4, as we saw earlier, were expressing interest in collaborating on research. So this was a really strong finding. So the opportunity we see here is to recognize instructional designers as potential researchers and partners in teaching and learning research projects. Our second takeaway is that many instructional designers feel underprepared to engage in research on teaching and learning. So even though they have a high interest, in some cases they feel that they need more preparation. As we mentioned earlier in the presentation, more than half did not take any research methods courses as undergraduates. And so they acknowledge that in some cases they don't feel fully comfortable. So the opportunity here is to provide professional development opportunities for these instructional designers to learn more about research designs and methods related specifically to researching, teaching, and learning. The motivation is there, and the interest in developing those skills is there. So our third takeaway is that although research on teaching and learning is not included in the majority of instructional designers, a large number are engaging in research collaborations. And as we had mentioned before, more than half had collaborated on this kind of research. So the opportunity here is, when appropriate, to formally recognize the research engagement of instructional designers by including this work in their job description and their evaluation criteria wherever possible. So our fourth takeaway is that instructional designers face a range of obstacles when they are attempting to engage in research on teaching and learning. The largest percentage, we didn't go over these results, but I will just preview that the largest percentage when asked about what kind of obstacles they faced said it was time, that they didn't have the time to devote above and beyond, especially those who did not have it in their job description. They didn't have time to dedicate to doing research. So that was one of the obstacles. So what is the opportunity here? Well, review institutional policies for conducting research on teaching and learning research to ensure that instructional designers are not unnecessarily excluded from this work. And then our last takeaway is that the majority of instructional designers in this study think that knowledge of research design and methods enhances their work, and that they will be perceived as more credible if they're conducting research on teaching and learning. And I showed you some of these results. So the opportunity here is to embrace the identity of instructional designers as researchers by creating space to read scholarly literature, engage in research projects, and collaborate with partners on research designs, analyses, and dissemination. So that's a great opportunity. So now I'm going to bring Katie back in to kind of transition us into Q&A. Shall I move forward? Okay.
All right, so we have just given you a portion of the results from this research report. What you will find in the report that's available on our website, it's also linked in the chat box, is kind of the full results. We've also included data tables from all of the different questions and the full instrument. So if you want to go and kind of see the complete picture of the study and the report, we recommend that you go to our website and take a look at that there. As we're kind of transitioning into questions, I also wanted to just briefly share a couple of things that we're doing here at Oregon State related to these research results and some of the changes that we're making here with our own instructional designers. So one of the things that we have done is to kind of more formally include our instructional designers in a program that we already have here that's a research fellows program. And this is a fellows program specifically for Oregon State faculty that we run through the research unit. The goal of the program is to help faculty conduct research on online teaching and learning. And so after we saw the results of this study and also talked with our own instructional design team, we've decided to, each year that we run that program, to engage one of our instructional designers in partnership with either the research unit or with a faculty member who becomes a fellow, so that they have an opportunity to be mentored into a research project if they would like to do that. So that is one kind of key way that we're starting to involve our instructional designers in research here. Of course, our research designers are kind of supporting a lot of the research that we do through the research unit on the back end of helping us set up things like our LMSs to make sure that we can collect the data that we need, but they're not always kind of working alongside us in that kind of mentoring role. So we're gonna work with them on that. The other thing that we have started to do is some broader trainings, not just for our instructional designers, but for our whole kind of organization here at Ecampus around different areas related to research. So one example of that is some trainings we've been doing recently on data visualization that we've opened up to several people kind of beyond the research unit, and have had a lot of interest from our instructional designers who are working with faculty to represent data in our classes, but who are also using that data visualization training in their own work as well. So we are continuing to kind of brainstorm and think about here what the results mean for our own campus and for our own instructional designers. And we also welcome, hearing from other people about what they're doing on their campuses in terms of this instructional designer professional development training around research. One of the key things too to kind of point out about our results here is we certainly had instructional designers who participated in this study who were not interested in engaging in research on teaching and learning, and that is totally fine. But we just want to make sure that the folks who do want to engage on research and teaching and learning are receiving the training and the support and the professional development that they need. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and shift us into Q&A, see if anyone has any specific questions about the report. There is a Q&A panel as part of the webinar platform where you can enter your question into the chat box. We're happy to answer any questions you might have. Jacqueline, do you see any questions coming in yet?
Thank you, Katie and Mary Ellen. I do not see any questions yet, but as a reminder, you can still submit those questions through the question box in the control panel, all the way at the bottom of the panel screen. Awesome. Well, while we're waiting for those to come in, I'm going to share a couple other things that might be of interest to you about this study. We do have additional webinars coming up, one on December 7th on confidence levels in and barriers to research design and methodology among instructional designers, being co-hosted with Quality Matters. And then in January, we have a final webinar on research design and methodology training needs of instructional designers with our partner, ELI EDUCAUSE. So those information about registration for those are linked on our website, where you also will find the ID study report. So if you click on that link, you will learn about these upcoming webinars. And there's a couple other things too that we thought might be of interest to this audience. One is an online learning efficacy research database that we launched earlier this month. And this is a database that allows you to search all of the studies that compare the modalities of online, hybrid or blended, and face-to-face classrooms. So this is just focused specifically on the modality comparison. So right now we have 186 citations in this database. One of the best features of it, I think, is that it's searchable by discipline. So if you are working with faculty and they're interested in how do we know that online learning works in a specific discipline, this might be one resource that you could point them to. All right, any other questions coming in at this point, Jacqueline? Fantastic, yes, we did receive a question. I'm pulling up the question box now. Give me one moment, I'm sorry about that. All right, so the question is, when you asked respondents about their undergraduate research experience, did you also ask if they had experience in any graduate education? especially since many had advanced degrees?
That is a great question, and the answer is yes. And we did not include that here just because we were kind of focused in on a particular topic. But there were a couple different things we asked both at the undergraduate level and at the graduate level. We were interested in knowing about the amount of courses that they had taken. And we were also interested in knowing whether or not they had any hands-on experience. And we defined that as something like a thesis or like a dissertation where they were actually doing kind of hands-on research with that particular course that they were taking or an expectation of their degree. So that is something that we have included in the report. And it is broken out by undergraduate and graduate. So we were interested in kind of all the different training they had received over time before they were in the position that they're in now. So it's an excellent question.
Want me to give you a number?
I think Mary Ellen has the report pulled up, so let's take a look here. All right, so for our graduate respondents, there were 171 who had taken courses. 42 had taken one course, had taken two, and about a third had taken 3 or 4 courses. Little less than 15% had taken 5 or more courses as a graduate degree. So the majority of those who took graduate courses indicated that they had involved hands-on experience with research design. About 85% of people who were taking research methods courses at the graduate level had that hands-on experience. And then there was also a much smaller number said that the courses did not involve hands-on experience. Some people didn't know, and we would imagine some people were reaching pretty far back in their memory banks about what they had as undergraduate and graduate students. But that was a good sign to us that we had 85%, and especially because so many of the people had graduate degrees in instructional design, it kind of implies that those instructional design degrees may be including research design and methodology. And that's definitely a possible follow-up to this study, is to learn a little bit more about the degree-specific training that's happening in this area for instructional designers.
Wonderful. The next question is about the PowerPoint and the link to the recording. To answer that question, it will be available on CORE on the UPCEA website. Katie, do you know if it will also be available on your site, on the Oregon State site?
We're going to be linking directly to the website recording from the Oregon State site, but you are welcome to contact us if you can't find the PowerPoint or the recording. We're happy to point you in the right direction. We're also providing UPCEA with an accessible PowerPoint as well, so it'll be screen readable if you have any colleagues who would have difficulty kind of rendering the PowerPoint itself on their machines. So there'll be a couple different versions of the PowerPoint available.
Great, thank you. We don't have any other questions as of now, but if you have any questions, please submit them.
All right, so one more resource I want to let people know about. If you are interested, maybe you are an instructional designer interested in research training, one of the things that we produce here through the Oregon State Ecampus Research Unit is the Research in Action podcast. This is a weekly show about topics and issues related to research in higher education. And we do provide full transcripts, show notes with every episode. We interview researchers from all over the world across all disciplines and have just a huge range of subjects. I believe we're in the 80s now of how many episodes we've released, so there's quite a few to choose from. And if you go to our podcast website, we have a nice episode guide that you can scan through and find the episodes that are going to be most relevant to you. All right, I think I see one more question here. Is there one more question, Jacqueline? Yes,
we have one more question. Any suggestions for how an ID can get started with a research project?
This is a great question. It's actually one that we get quite a bit. So I think that there are a few different avenues to get started. One of the things that we learned from our research is that instructional designers love to engage in collaborative research. That was a big result from this study, is they would actually prefer to collaborate than to do research on their own. So one possible entry point to getting started with a research project is to talk with faculty that you are already collaborating with on other projects to see if any of them are interested in the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning or in the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning Online, that they want to be kind of doing some research in their classrooms to ask questions or to try to kind of tackle a challenge that they've been having in their own classrooms. I think one avenue to get started is just that collaboration piece. A second avenue is something like the podcast or a massive open online course, a MOOC course, or there's so many books that are available on research design and research methodology that if you want to learn a little bit more about that, you can use all of these resources to kind of help guide your own professional development. But I also think that many research projects really just start with a question. So what is it that you're trying to answer? What are the challenges you're facing? Do you have a question about teaching and learning that you're seeing maybe a pattern of? It keeps arising with the different people you're working with. And once you start to kind of think about your question, then you can design out from that, how might you answer that question? And what might be the data that you would want to collect that would help you to get to an answer to that kind of teaching and learning problem or issue that you've identified. So those are a few different avenues, but I think that it definitely depends on the institutional context that you're in, the support structures you have available to you, and there's so many free resources out there available to kind of help educate you. That might be a great place to start to kick yourself off. Great question.
Fantastic. I don't think we have any other questions. I think that was the last one. In case anyone has any last-minute questions, please ask them now.
Thanks, everybody, for taking the time to attend the webinar. We've put links in the chat box for the ID study report, the research database that we mentioned, and also this podcast. We welcome you to reach out to us. I'm going to very quickly scan back to our first slide here so you can see our emails if you want to reach out. We're happy to answer additional questions about this study and provide any other resources that we might be able to. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Katie and Mary Ellen. On behalf of UPCEA and Oregon State University, thank you for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day.